Subscribers to NewOrleans.Football get all of our coverage, all of our analysis, an extra podcast every week, and so much more. Use the code NOF to save 20% on your first payment. Get locked in for draft season. That's NewOrleans.Football/subscribe. Use the code NOF to save 20% on your first payment. Welcome back to another episode of NewOrleans.Football. We are coming to you from PJ's. They bring you every episode of the show, so make sure you check them out. We're at the location on Airline Drive in Metairie. Beautiful new store. Make sure you come and check that out. And if you're in the market for a new car, hit up my guy, Matt Bowen. He's got the best cars at the best prices, dealerships all over the region. He'll get you whatever you need and get you out of there with the best car buying experience. We got another great show for you guys today. We're going to talk more about the draft, what the Saints might do in it, and everything that comes along with that. We're going to break down all of that and so much more. Matt Bowen from ESPN joins us, so make sure you stick around to watch that. We'll be right back after this quick break from our sponsors. The NewOrleans.Football show is proudly presented by PJ's Coffee. PJ's Coffee has some of the best drinks that you can find. They have locations all over the city. They have pastries and everything else you need to get your day started. So go check them out. Are you looking for the perfect engagement ring? Look no further than Friend & Company Fine Jewelers' new engagement salon. This new area houses a wide selection of engagement rings to choose from in all cuts, sizes, and colors. Their experienced staff offer 5-star customer care to help you find the perfect ring to express your love. Visit their new engagement salon today. Friend & Company Fine Jewelers, the perfect ring for the perfect moment and also for the perfect person. 7713 Maple Street between Adams and Burdett Street. 504-866-5433. Friend & Company Fine Jewelers. Check them out at friendandcompany.com. Hardhide Ponchatoula Strawberry Whiskey is an 86 proof blend of aged wheat bourbon, American light whiskey, and fresh Ponchatoula strawberries. Blended in New Orleans, it is not for the thin-skinned. Look for it in your favorite stores, bars, and restaurants. NewOrleans.Football is proud to be sponsored by Firehouse Subs. Make sure you check out their location on Veterans Boulevard. All right, let's get into the show. Let's get into our lead topic presented by Friend & Company Fine Jewelers, the official jewelers of the New Orleans Saints. They have a great engagement salon there, so if you are in the market for an engagement ring, make sure you check them out. They got rings in all price ranges. They will get you what you need and get you the most beautiful diamond that you need for that special question. And while you're there, make sure you check out their fleur-de-lis necklace and earrings that you see on the screen right now. The earrings are priced at $1,100 and the necklace is $1,350. Tell them that NOF sent you. All right. When do you think is the best time for the Saints to draft an offensive tackle? Obviously, they need at least one with Trevor Penning's future uncertain and Ryan Ramczyk's future uncertain, and maybe even two if both those things don't go the right way. We just did our first mock draft, and we ended up grabbing J.C. Latham with the first pick in that. It was just kind of how it fell. You'll have to sign up to read the rest of that. We do all 7 rounds. There's a trade up for a guy. It's our first go at it, and we'll have one of those every Thursday leading up to the draft, so we got 2 more to go. But we just did a Would You Rather on the last show. Let's do another one just kind of geared towards the offensive tackle situation. Look, we took Latham because Joe Alt and Fashanu were already gone. I think we like both those guys.
I think we would both take those two, run up to the podium.
Yeah, we like both those guys a little bit better. But, you know, would they wait until 45? What is kind of the thing that we would prefer the most out of these scenarios? Take Latham at 14, trade down 10 spots and get Oklahoma offensive tackle Tyler Guyton plus an extra second rounder, or take a defensive end or pass catcher at 14 and grab Patrick Paul in round 2. He went to Houston.
All right, so let's take them one at a time. Latham at 14 is what we did, but we did that obviously not knowing if those other guys would be around, not knowing if we can't. We did project a trade up later, but you don't know for sure if you're going to find the right trade partner. I think this scenario is more if you knew for sure these people would be waiting for you, what would be the best value? And I'm a little torn here. I like Latham. He's my 3rd favorite offensive tackle. He's been a right tackle. He could move to left tackle, but he's been a right tackle. He's a big, powerful guy, 342 pounds. I think there's still some projection with him. I don't think he'll be a finished product right when he enters the NFL, and he's probably going to be – I don't know if they'd start him at right tackle before moving him to left tackle even in a second year or whatever. I like it. But does he separate himself from the guys like Tyler Guyton, possibly Fautanu, some other guys that you could get if you traded down? I have a feeling I'm going to go with the second one, but how sold are you on Latham?
I'm not. I mean, I think he's good. I think there's some stuff that could be a little bit better, but I do think that he is somebody that you draft and you think he's going to be a day one starter, and I don't think you believe that with some of the other guys, Fontenot and them. I don't know that that's necessarily the case. It could be, but I don't know that he's guaranteed. They might need a little bit more development. I think he does start right away, so I like him better than those options. So if we're going to go to the next one, trading down, getting Guyton and an extra second rounder, it depends how much of an answer you need on that. And I guess, like, what are you getting with that second rounder? And I don't know the answer to that. Yeah. So I think for me, between those two, I think I go Latham at 14. The extra second rounder sounds great, and it's an extra swing of the bat, but, like, I don't know if it's worth the downgrade just for that, because I don't know. I think I like option 3 the best out of 2 and 3, and I like 1 better than 2 and 3.
I think 2 might be my favorite scenario, which is trade down 10 spots, get Tyler Guyton plus an extra second rounder. Now, is anyone offering that trade? I don't know for sure. That's what the trade charts say. Would Guyton be there if you traded down 10 spots? I don't know for sure. This is my favorite thing if I'm running the Saints. I like Guyton a lot. I mean, I think he's fluid, he's fast. Like, I see a future left tackle who could be really good there. This is not my favorite as the Saints analyst to come on come on these shows and hear the fan fallout, because Guyton's a little bit of a projection. He only started for about 1 full season plus at Oklahoma. I mean, I heard some analysts talking about how he might be a guy that sits the first year and starts the second year. I don't think that would be the case in New Orleans, obviously, but depending on what team he goes to. And I don't think anyone wants a projection here. So for that reason, I do love the idea of taking a sure thing. So maybe you just do it at 14. But I think Guyton could end up being just as good as anyone outside of Joe Alt and Olu Fashanu. And the idea of getting Guyton plus 2 second-round picks, I think that's my favorite one of these scenarios.
I like Guyton more than Fontenot, Fuaga, Mims, all them guys. Like, I think that I would put him in that
Mims
that range.
Even more of a projection.
Yeah,
I think.
I like him more than all the guys in that range. I am not. They're gonna end up drafting him, and I'm gonna be like saying all this stuff, but I'm not sold on Fontenot. Like, I'm not. Like, he's not. I just don't think he's the guy that everybody says he is. I think he's more of an inside guy than an outside guy, and I don't think he's a left tackle. Like, I just don't see it. So I'm not sold on him at all. I would be okay with Guyton. And I think you're right. I think he does have a chance to be better than a lot of those guys. I don't know if you trade down 10 spots if you get him, though, either. I don't know if that's really the range. I know he's kind of right there for a lot of people as 4th. I think a lot of people have him higher than Fontenot.
Right, it'd be risky. And again, the premise of this is somehow you can see the future and know you get him. The risk of trading down is there could be a run on tackles from like 18 to 22, and all of a sudden you missed out on all of them. Yeah, for sure.
I just kind of like the idea of getting like someone that I know for sure is like a difference maker. So that's why I got 3 ahead of 2, taking a D-end or pass catcher at 14, and then Patrick Paul in the second. I kind of like just cutting out any guesswork, and it's kind of like at 14 I feel like I'm getting a outstanding tackle or an outstanding pass catcher or an outstanding defensive end if he's worthy of that 14th pick. So I kind of like all those right there. So if you're telling me, and I don't think you get the DN that's worthy of the 14th pick, but I think you can get a receiver that's worthy of pick 14, someone that's like 6'3", runs 4.3. Like, those guys are going to be there at 14. And then I don't know that Patrick Paul's like a surefire thing as a OT, but I think you're kind of, I like the idea of getting the OT at 14, the pass catcher at 45, or the pass catcher at 14 and the OT at 45, because at least one of them, I feel like you're getting a star.
Well, Paul's really interesting to me because this topic was inspired by the mock draft we did. We got to 45, and Patrick Paul was still there. Now, when you make the pick at 14, you don't know that's going to be the case. But then we're sitting there in the draft room and being like, oh, shoot, if we had known Patrick Paul was going to be here at 45, should we have gone a different direction than J.C. Latham in round 1? And I still don't know the answer to that question. Patrick Paul is obviously not a sure thing. I mean, getting a guy from Houston after what just happened with Peyton Turner is going to put bad thoughts in people's heads. after they just took Trevor Penning and they said, can he make the leap from Northern Iowa into the big leagues after the level of competition he faced? That'll put a negative thought into people's heads. Patrick Paul, I think, is an actual left tackle, though. I don't think that's a projection. And he's experienced. He has, I think, 44 career starts. And I think, there's a scenario where he is as good as 5 or 6 guys that get drafted in round 1. He certainly has the traits. He's a really big dude. His brother is Chris Paul, not that Chris Paul, but Chris Paul that starts in the NFL for the Washington Commanders. Look, if you go ahead, especially if you get somebody that we talked about the other day, like the dream scenario where Rome Odunze or Brock Bowers or Dallas Turner falls to you in round 1 and then end up with Patrick Paul in round 2, that might be the absolute best case scenario. For me, though, out of these 3, I think I'm, trade down, get a total of 3 players, and get someone like Guyton in the mid-20s. That's probably the least realistic of the 3 when we're talking Saints, though.
Who was the Texas Tech tight end that busted big time? Jason Morrow. Like, imagine being like, well, we can't take Mahomes because Jace wasn't a good player. Like, that's the stupidest thing to me. It's just like they can't draft a linebacker because the last linebacker busted. Like, that's not a reason for me to stay away from somebody at all. But you're right. That would immediately be the reaction. Houston.
How dare you?
Look, I don't think he's going to be a great player. And look, I think there's a chance that Latham could end up being the second best tackle in this draft. Like, any one of those top 3, I think, are great. Are great prospects from there. I just think they have to get one. They have to get an answer. And really, I think the willingness to be able to wait there until 45 is kind of it's what's behind the curtain right now. Like, do you have a veteran guy just kind of waiting on ice to sign him after the draft? That's kind of the question there. If you don't, I don't know that you have the luxury of even considering anything else but best available tackle at 14. I think you kind of have to do it. I would be shocked, though. Like, we've seen their pro personnel department work. Like, they definitely they got to have a plan to kind of address
it is not out of the question. If you take someone else at 14 and you get to 45 and Patrick Paul's not there, there are a lot of good guards there. And if you draft a guard at 45, it still can help put the puzzle together. I mean, maybe you get Mekhi Becton, maybe you get Andrus Peat back in here, maybe you move James Hurst or I'm drawing a blank on the guy they just signed, Oli Udoh. And you've got question marks at tackles, but you've got a stud at guard. So, at 45, there will be options.
How do you feel about that, though? Like, the trade back? Like, I think one of my biggest pieces with this team right now is that they don't have enough, young stars, building blocks. And I feel like if you're trading back.
You want a star.
Yeah, I want somebody that is just kind of like, here's an anchor point for the team moving forward. And I feel like you got a better chance of that at 14. But, again, you can find that guy in the second round. I mean, Mike Thomas was a second-round pick. Marcus Williams was a second-round pick.
I am not a trade down disciple like a lot of people are, and yes, it makes sense since it's such a crapshoot. More lottery tickets you can buy the way, but I feel that way this year, like more than ever before with this team. I would love to have 3 top 50 to top 60 picks. I don't just like picks. I don't want 4 third-rounders. I don't want 4 fourth-rounders or whatever. But if you're talking about getting and we just did this, Kevin and I, on the members-only pod. We went and we said what was their best pick in every round. What they've done in the second round over the last really over this entire century, but they're really nailing the second round too. Those are guys we feel good about being on this team right now, or some of the second-rounders that they've had in recent years. So if you're truly adding a second-rounder and you're giving me the 24th pick, the 45th pick, and the 50th pick in this year's draft, I feel really good about that.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's just kind of you got to hit on them. I wouldn't hate if they trade down. I'm just kind of like you get what you pay for kind of thing, and it's like it just feels like you got a better shot at 14, but you might not. Like, it's deep enough at the 2 positions that they kind of have major needs at too. That there is merit to the thinking. I just in the would you rather, I just kind of like the give me the best player at 14.
If it's Joe Alt or Olu Fashanu, I don't move down. I'm so sold on those guys. This to me is the we didn't get the sure thing. Like, to me, Latham is almost like the 14th player on my board at 14. Like, what do you do if that happens? If a top 6 player on my board is available at 14, then I don't trade down.
I take Latham. I think there's a little bit of a dip after that. I think if those 3 are gone, though, you don't. And if they are gone, then maybe you do jet back, and maybe
it really depends on their board. And that's
maybe you do. I don't know if he makes it to 22, but maybe then you do a Brian Thomas and Patrick Paul combo and get another tackle in the second round. Maybe that's it.
That's the one thing I don't think people appreciate enough in these conversations is they look at analyst boards. They even listen to what we're saying. But if you are a team like the Saints and you have somebody in this like elite bubble, like we think there's 8 true like superstars in this draft, and one of them is left when you're there at 14, then you pounce. You don't think about trading down. If you're like, oh, well, we kind of have all these guys from like 12 to 22 with a similar grade, then you trade down. If they see like a top 8 guy on their board, then I don't hold it against them for staying put.
I will say I'm talking myself into it, like taking a pass catcher and getting 2 tackles. If you aren't getting one of the top tackles at 14, it feels a little bit better if you take the pass catcher at 22 than it does at 14, and then you get the 2 tackles in the second round or something like that. But I want the best player. I want the talent. I want the stars. I kind of just feel like they're lacking that a little bit. All right. Moving on to our next segment, which is brought to you by Hardhide Punchatoula Strawberry Whiskey. The Saints just signed another guy that was a little bit under the radar, linebacker, former Washington Commanders player, Khaleke Hudson, who was a special teams asset for the Commanders, but he had a good role on defense last year, started the last 4 games, had 52 tackles by way of comparison. I think DeMario and Pete Werner both were under 26, and that's when I think it was 26 and 25 over the last 4 weeks of the season. So he cleaned up and had some good range, good special teams player, good depth player, almost certainly another league minimum type player with upside. What do you like about the signing?
All of a sudden, I feel so good about their linebacker depth, which, if I remember right, going into the offseason, I think I ranked it 4th. It was that or safety was 4th because I had some concerns about the depth. But they had Willie Gay Jr. Now they had Khaleke Hudson. They still have a lot of young guys. Monty Rice was a late season pickup that they had last year. DeMarco Jackson's been around. Anthony Orji, Nephi Sewell. Like and a lot of these guys can play special teams. That is something you can do. I mean, it's interesting. Like you said, you were the one who pointed out he led the NFL in tackles over the last 4 games last year. He said, we got him on the phone today, and he said one of the things he liked about coming to the Saints was they were going to give him a real chance to compete, to play defense. And I'm like, that's what Willie Gay Jr. said too. And there's still Pete Werner and there's Demario Davis. I'm really interested to see how this position shakes out. I'm not going to pencil him into my starting lineup, but with his special teams history plus what he did when he was an injury replacement last year, I think he's definitely in my 53-man roster projection.
DeMario had 29 tackles over the last 4 games of the season. Pete Werner had 24. So you combine them guys, and he had, what is that, one more tackle? They had one more tackle than him combined over that span, which is crazy. It's a crazy.
Washington didn't even make an offer to bring him back. I asked him. Now it's a whole different regime, new GM, new coach. He said they just told him, or they told his agent, they have a different vision for how they're going to use their linebackers there, so they don't want him back, which is crazy after he finished so strong there.
Yeah, he's for me, he's a little bit undersized. Could definitely move a little bit. I think there's some things that he does well.
Craig Robertson vibes.
Maybe
when asked to start, Craig Robertson
maybe a little better. I think, but good special teams player. The game 2 years ago against Washington, I don't know if you remember Alvin's second punt return. He's bringing it, and he got lit up, and it was him. It was him who did it. It was a huge hit kind of coming like right through it. It was one of those moments where I think like we all like kind of cringing, like why is he returning punts, get him out of the game, like one of those things. Like he's too valuable for that.
Oh, that's
I like him though, but I find it incredibly interesting that these guys around the league that are on these 1-year linebacker deals, they all look at the situation and they say like I could get a role here, like based on who was on the team. That kind of, it's fascinating to me that kind of they look at it and see like, all right, this is a spot where I need to kind of reestablish my career and get on track, and like maybe this is a spot where I can win a role and do it. I found that incredibly interesting.
I'm surprised too. It made me like briefly hesitate. Like, are the Saints going to trade Pete Werner or something like that? And we don't know about it, but it'll sort itself out this year, and then a lot of guys. These guys on 1-year deals plus Pete Werner going into free agency, they're sort of all auditioning for who's going to be the guy left standing in the future. But the other thing that this got me thinking, so Khaleke Hudson was in Washington for I think 4 years, mostly as a special teamer, and then because of injuries he got his chance to start, ends up with 74 tackles last year. Reminds me a little of like what happened with Caden Allison his last year with the Saints. Zach Bond to a lesser extent last year. Carl Granderson, another good example of somebody who kind of flew under the radar for a few years before playing a huge role. Is there anybody on the current Saints roster that we're just not talking about enough that could be Khaleke Hudson, Caden Ellis, Zach Bond, Carl Granderson? Any candidates to you?
Yeah, I mean, like Khaleke's like a special teams linebacker, role player type guy. Like I think like there's a parallel to like a Jonathan Abram maybe. Like
sure.
I think he kind of had some of that to him. I'm not like super like I don't like if you're asking me today, I don't see Khaleke being a starter on defense or anything like that.
But I just mean the guy who we're not talking about at all that ends up playing a key role for the Saints.
I agree. I think though if we were to like stack him, I think I have him fourth just for just kind of like as we're ranking him. I think he's coming in the training camp as the fourth guy.
I agree.
But yeah, injuries not. I think we've seen it last year with Abram. He went in, he played well, he had himself a nice role, good on special teams, all that kind of stuff. So I think that there's probably a little bit of a parallel to that. He'd probably go somewhere and be someone's league minimum player and feel like he could compete for a job and all that stuff. And in a way, he kind of did. Like he kind of beat out everybody else that was ahead of him on the depth chart last year. Some of those guys are gone, and Lonnie Johnson's out of here, Abrams back. So he kind of did do that, but ended up staying with the team that had him.
No, that's a really good pick. Funny enough, so I tried to answer this question, and a couple of guys I thought of are Foster Moreau and Cedric Wilson. I don't think they really count because they were veterans who had success in other places, but they're just both completely off the radar. No one's expecting anything. And they actually fit the Jonathan Abram profile, I think. Foster Moreau and Cedric Wilson, two guys who maybe this offense suits them. Maybe they find more for them to do. But the guy who actually fits this profile that I was specifically asking about, going into his fourth year with the Saints, has essentially done nothing like Caden Ellis. Really, Trey Hendrickson's another guy who fits that mold. And we never talk about him as a possibility to fill in one of these offensive line positions, but Landon Young. Like, what if the light bulb goes on for Landon Young and he's healthy and he competes for a starting job? He would be like that version of Caden Ellis. I'm not saying I'm predicting it, but that's the guy that fits this profile. DeMarco Jackson's another one, third-year guy who's been a special teamer and a backup linebacker. I just don't see the path for him now. They keep signing linebackers to take a step ahead of him.
I hope it does. It'd be great if he did. It'd be hard to see it coming, Like, so it's hard. It's hard to see and be like, yeah, I see that coming for him. It would be great if it did, though. It would answer a lot of problems if the light bulb goes on for anybody. Could it be Trevor Penning? Light bulb goes on for him.
Well, Saldivari and Foskey were two other guys I wrote down here. We have talked a lot about them, too. And they're second-year guys. They're not guys who
Penning's
are like
not under the radar at all either. Yeah. All right. We're going to be back with Matt Bowen. He breaks down Saints free agency and much more right after this quick word from our great sponsors. Make sure you support them, and we'll be right back.
Are you tired of renting and ready to own your dream home? Contact Jefferson Financial Federal Credit Union, your trusted source for home loans. Our competitive rates and flexible terms can help make your home ownership dreams a reality. If you're a first-time home buyer or looking to refinance, our experienced lenders are here to help. Our online application process allows you to apply on your schedule. It's quick, easy, and convenient. Visit us online at jeffersonfinancial.org to learn more. Federally insured by NCUA, Equal Housing Lender.
Martin Wine and Spirits is home to a selection of hand-picked barrel select bourbon, whiskeys, and much, much more. They are family owned and operated since 1946 and specialize in wine, spirits, gourmet food, gift baskets, catering, and tasting events. They have many locations, so they're never too far away. You can check them out in Metairie, New Orleans, Mandeville, and Baton Rouge, or if it's more convenient, you can always shop online. Whether you're a wine novice or a seasoned collector, you'll enjoy the Martin Wine and Spirit experience.
All right, welcome back to PJ's Coffee on Airline Drive. As we said, we have a guest on today's show. I pre-taped an interview with ESPN NFL analyst Matt Bowen. Look, I'm admittedly biased here when I kind of sing his praises because I went to the University of Iowa with Matt, and then I was his teammates at ESPN for nearly a decade. But because I know him so well, I know how hard he grinds at this stuff, how much tape he watched. Used to be the host of the NFL Matchups show, and he has always been super plugged in on the Saints in particular, really knows this defense well, was a safety in the NFL for 7 years himself, and once played for Greg Williams, among other things. So as you will see here when you listen to this, he really has, I think, his finger on the pulse of what's going on with the Saints right now. One of the main reasons I wanted to have you on this time was because you do the free agent rankings for ESPN. Mm-hmm. You did them before free agency started. And you had Chase Young 15th overall heading into free agency. Obviously, we didn't know about the neck surgery yet at that time. But that was a little higher than I think I saw anyone else rank him. And then Willie Gay Jr., you had ranked as your best bargain or your best value of any free agent signing anywhere in the NFL. So start with these two guys. What do you like about these two guys?
Well, the reason I had Chase Young ranked so high, one is his age. He's 25 years old. Okay. And this is what free agency is about. It's about finding players in the middle of, or more preferably, entering their prime playing year. That's where Chase Young is entering. You have to remember, he was a top 5 pick for a reason. He has the high-level physical tools or physical traits you want in an edge player. Now, you want to see more production. I understand that. I thought he would have more last year going to San Francisco. But look, I've been a guy, and I wasn't traded because it wasn't that good, but someone who's been cut in season and showed up at a brand new facility on another team. It's hard to adjust at times. And I'm not making excuses for anyone, but I've been in a situation where you come into a new system, new terminology, new coaching, new voice in the room, and the production doesn't hit immediately. However, I'll say this about Chase Young. Go back and watch the Super Bowl tape, okay? Playing on the stage of the Super Bowl with everyone watching, everyone in the league watching. He had a couple pressures. He had a sack. I think you saw what he can do just in that football game, given the stage they're playing on. And then I go back to what I saw earlier in his career. Obviously, he's had some injuries. We understand that. That's why you're getting a player on a one-year deal at this time. But I always look forward, Mike, and someone who has those physical tools and physical traits, I call those uncoachable traits, right? You can coach stance alignment. You can coach technique. You can teach defenders where to put their eyes, where to get a jump on an offensive play based on personnel, down and distance, formation, and alignment. Those are coachable things, but you can't coach the speed off the ball from Chase Young, the power, the ability to bend and turn the corner. And he has multiple counter moves that he's shown. So I think this is, from the perspective of the Saints, a really good signing because it's all about upside here. It's a one-year contract. This is an upside move to put him with Dennis Allen and his coaching staff, and especially in that Saints system. And look, we'll talk about this, but when I did the NFL matchup show for 4 years for ESPN, and for those who don't know what it is, it's a coaching tape show. It's much different than anything else on TV, where you watch the all-22 film, you break it down from a coaching perspective. And I can't tell you how many times I did the Saints in 4 years, okay? And how many times I went to Dennis Allen's tape, because I love the system. I love what they do. And think about Dennis Allen and how he schemes for his pass rushers. What I mean by that, Mike, is how you set up one-on-one with loaded fronts or overloaded fronts. What you're trying to do is get specific one-on-ones for a specific player in that pass rush situation. You can do that with Chase Young, and I think you'll see a lot of that. Plus, with Dennis Allen, there's so much stunts and loops up front. They are a heavy stunt front. And again, with Chase Young, going back to those physical traits, let's loop him inside. Let's get him to use that closing speed and get home to the quarterback.
Oh, that was one of the questions I was going to ask you. We'll get to Willie Gay Jr. in a minute. But Dennis Allen, real quick, he's pretty polarizing right now. He's got a losing record as a head coach for his career. 2 games under 500 in his 2 years here, missed the playoffs both years. That's as a head coach. But obviously he got to this position through his defense. Sounds like you have a ton of respect for his acumen in that department.
I do. I think he's one of the best defensive play callers and one of the best schemes overall in the National Football League. Look what they do with their secondary. Always changing the picture post-snap. It doesn't matter if you're going against Mahomes or a young quarterback. You still have to make them work, right? You don't just line up and say, okay, throw the ball all over us. No, you don't. You change the picture. That means a lot of late rotation, a lot of disguise, a lot of versatility in your defense. And that's what Dennis Allen has always had, versatility at all 3 levels of the defense. Obviously, I focus a ton in the secondary, but you have players with man coverage traits, with backfield vision to play in zone, and the versatility to drop down as a hook defender from a safety position, to rotate to play center field over the top, to get to the deep half, to drop late and cut crossers coming across the formation. They do a lot of things that fit the modern NFL and how you defend a modern NFL pass game. The number one thing you want to do, because this is what the league's about now, Mike, the ability to limit explosive plays. There's 2 things you have to do right now, in my opinion, to win on the defensive side of the ball. I don't care about stats. I don't care how many rushing yards, passing yards. It doesn't matter to me. Can you hit the quarterback? Can you eliminate explosive plays? That's really it. I mean, if you look at it from a broad view, that's what the game is played right now. It's all about explosive plays. So you have to have that versatility. You got to have a pass rush. And at times you have to scheme your pass rush like Dennis Allen does, and especially the versatility in the secondary, what allows you to play multiple coverages.
Where do you think they've dropped off the last couple of years? Year and a half probably in run defense. Last 3/4 of last season overall as a defense. What concerns you about the direction they're heading right now?
Well, I think you need to get younger and faster on the defensive front. They're trying to do that. You added Chase Young. You can look in the draft, and when you get to the second round, maybe a defensive tackle, someone who is a disruptor inside. You mentioned the run defense. Maybe look at a nose guard in the second round, a guy like T'Vondre Sweat out of the University of Texas, 6'5", 366 pounds. Someone that will completely change your defensive profile up front. You mentioned earlier, you add someone like Willie Gay. That's another versatile player that can be utilized or deployed in multiple ways at the second level of your defense, especially in passing situations. Someone that can create more pressure, someone that can match a running back or a tight end in space, and someone that can drive top down in the football. You need more players like that, and ultimately more speed on your defense.
I know you've done the defensive ends, the defensive tackles. You've done your film study. You've done your write-ups on all those guys. Dallas Turner feels like it's not going to happen. It feels like he's going to go to the rival Falcons before the Saints can pick at 14. We're going to talk about offensive tackles in a minute because I think they almost have to go offensive tackle in round 1. But do you like Leatu Latu? Do you like Jared Verse? You see more value if they wait till pick 45.
I'm a big fan of Jared Verse. Extremely. I really like his game. And what I do, Mike, is a little different because, have been a high school coach now for a decade, is you tend to look at players from a coaching perspective, right? Especially on the defensive side of the ball for me. Prospects that I would want to coach, right? And for me, Jared Verse is one of those players. He has the size. He has the explosive first step. He has the traits you want in an edge defender. But the ultimate thing for me is how he plays, his overall play demeanor. Do you have that high-level effort? Do you have that high-level energy? Do you have relentless pursuit to get to the quarterback and get to the football? And that's what I see on tape with him. Now, obviously, that would be someone that would immediately upgrade their defensive front, especially with Dennis Allen, like we talked about, can be schemed in his alignments up front to get those one-on-ones and get home to the quarterback, but also the type of identity he would help bring to your defense. Because, look, if you're an offensive player and you're watching tape and these guys are flying around, well, it changes how you prepare for the game. It changes how you feel going into the game. If you're a quarterback knowing that even when I step up, even when I escape or extend the pocket, that Jared Verse is not going to stop playing, then I got to get the football out. That I'm a big fan of Jared Verse, and he's a very interesting prospect, Mike, because I don't know where he goes. Does he? What about Chicago at 9? Does he go? Maybe. Does he go past the Saints and get to the late teens? I don't know that right now, but I'll tell you what. When I watch his film, I'm very dialed in, and there's a lot to like there.
I would feel so much better about this defense if they drafted Jared Verse in round 1, T'Vondre Sweat in round 2, but then that would leave major holes on this offense.
Right.
We don't know if Ryan Ramchek's going to play at all. We don't know if Trevor Penning's going to earn his way onto the field at left tackle. They have a hole at left guard. I mean, that's 3 holes on the offensive line. Before we get to the players you like in the draft, what do you think of Clint Kubiak? He's got the veteran coaches in Rick Dennison and John Benton come over to coach this run game. It's the Kubiak Shanahan system from the original Kubiak and the original Shanahan. Can they make this work if they don't get better talent on the offensive line?
Yeah, you can make it work. Look, I played against that system even way back in my career. And I'll tell you what, I've always said this story about the Shanahan-Kubiak system. We played the Broncos the Hall of Fame game in 2004. And back then, starters played, right? It was so different. And you know this, Mike, that we had 5 preseason games that summer. And I was a starter in Washington, and I played in all 5. You didn't get any breaks. So the first Hall of Fame game, we played a quarter and a half. And I remember the third play of the game. It was misdirection. And I'm a roll down safety to the weak side. Well, me and the linebacker ran into each other, like literally ran into each other, because that's what they do. They test your eye discipline so much on the defensive side of the ball, both in the run game and in the play action passing game. And they're married together. What I mean by that, Mike, is everything looks the same. So if you're a safety and you stick your eyes in the backfield, you are in trouble, because the pass looks just like the run and vice versa. They will get numbers to the point of attack in the run game. They will use that misdirection. You need a quarterback with mobility, which you have in Derek Carr. What I mean by mobility, I'm not talking about design rushes, Mike. I'm talking about someone to get to the edges on boot. That's what you want. Someone that can, obviously escape and extend from the pocket, which we know Derek Carr has, but more importantly, get outside the pocket, because that's where we're going to put him. And if you have issues on your offensive line, what do you want to do? You want to use play action protection over drop back protection. Why? Because now you're making the defensive line work laterally to the line of scrimmage in their first step, right? Because they're reading reach block. They're reading inside, outside zone. and now they're stepping laterally instead of stepping up the field. Then you boot your quarterback to the outside. Now you have throwing things. Now, obviously, Mike, Derek Carr will still have to make plays in the drop back passing game. We know that. When it comes to 3rd and 7 to 10, that play action is worthless. So he's going to have to make those throws. But you can, in my opinion, facilitate so much more production at the quarterback position with the heavy play action system that mirrors your run game.
Where are you in Derek Carr in general?
I've always liked Derek Carr
because
of the traits, because he has the arm talent. He has the mobility. He can move in the pocket. I think he needs to do a better job seeing the field and keeping his eye level up when the pocket starts to squeeze on him, right? And that's the test for every quarterback in the NFL. When the pocket starts to squeeze and those walls start to close, instead of looking for an escape door, can you have that physical element about yourself as a quarterback? Step up, reset your throwing window, and then drive the football, because we know he has the traits as a thrower. There's no question about it. I remember being at the Senior Bowl, and I'm sure you were there, Mike, when Derek Carr was down there and watching him throw, and you can hear the football coming out of his hands. He has a big-time arm. There's no question about it. Needs to be more consistent, needs to make smarter decisions with the football, needs to protect the football and limit turnovers. And I think play at a higher level when that pocket starts to close.
This system should get the best out of him, or you don't know that for sure?
You never know for sure, Mike, but look, the quarterbacks I played against during my career that were in that system did not have the traits of Derek Carr, and they were highly productive.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just saw one in the Super Bowl, right?
Yeah. So I think it's a good system for quarterbacks that buy into the system, that understand there's going to be a lot of defying reads. What I mean by that, Mike, is when I hit that back foot off of play action, I'm driving the ball. I know where the window is going to be. I got to anticipate it still, but I know it's schemed for me to throw it there. Okay, and there's been a lot of that. It's a very quarterback-friendly system. And with Derek Carr, you can also scheme your vertical throws down the field. When you take your shot plays, ball inside, I always say the shot zone is between the 40s, right? That's where you take your shots down the field. And for Derek Carr, what you do in that situation, play action, max protection, you have a 2-man route down the field, and that's where you have to cut it loose. And ultimately, the test for Derek Carr will be, is he willing enough, Mike, to consistently cut it loose?
Last question. I know you've only started to do your deep dive into the offensive tackles, but how many of them you think are worth that 14th pick? I know maybe Olu Fashanu won't get there. Those are the true left tackles. Who else could potentially play left tackle or that you love maybe if they move him to right tackle, left guard?
Well, one of my favorite tackles, and I think he probably is just a right tackle, is J.C. Latham from Alabama. And that goes back to the play demeanor. You're talking about a Kubiak system, having a right tackle that can drive block. What I mean by that, Mike, is displace defenders, reset the line of scrimmage from an offensive perspective. And he is nasty now. He is a nasty finisher. I think he's got good footwork. He can mirror and pass pro. He's a very well-coached player coming from Alabama. I think he's probably more on the right side. I do think that's a player, if he gets past Vegas, that will be there at 14 for the Saints. And Fashanu might be there. We don't know that yet, but that is your left tackle.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're looking for a left tackle. I think it's Fashanu. And because he has the traits, he has the length, he's an ascending prospect who hasn't come close to his ceiling. Remember this, Mike, about the draft. We can talk about areas of concern all the time, right?
Yeah.
We always do that with prospects. But what you're drafting is traits and talent. That's what you're looking for. Just like we talked about with Chase Young, right? Now you have to coach the rest. And when someone always tells me, well, he can't do that, well, then teach him. Because if you can't teach him, then you shouldn't be coaching. Okay, that's your job to teach him. If he has the high-end physical tools and the high-end physical traits, now it's my job as a coach to put him in the right position first. Okay, put him in the right position. Because we talk about versatility all the time, right, Mike? Well, he's got versatility. He can do X, Y, and Z. That's great, but he has to line up at a position. We often forget that in our analysis of the draft, especially during draft season at this time, is where is he on day one? We can't say he can play at right tackle and maybe no, he has to be at one spot. So if he's your left tackle, put him at left tackle. Teach him how to play it in a professional manner that works on Sundays. But understand it's your job to get him ready to play pro football.
Well, awesome, man. I could go through the entire roster with you, the entire draft class with you, but that'll be enough time for this time. We'll have to get to some more guys later. Thanks so much for coming on the show, Matt.
All right, go Hawks.
All right, thanks again to Matt Bowen for joining the show. 2 more little-known facts about Matt. He was on the field. We were talking about this off camera. When Hakeem dropped the ball, the first playoff game in Saints history, Matt was on that punt return team for the Rams as a rookie. He was also drafted one spot ahead of Tom Brady. Also picked off Tom Brady in his career run. So we could have had Tom Brady on the show. We decided to go one better.
Well, I guess that's one way to put it. No, great stuff from both you guys. Appreciate Matt for coming on. And now it is time for the Martin's questions of the day. Martin's is home to a wide selection of hand-picked barrel-select bourbons, whiskeys, and so much more. Martin, so much more than just wine. First question comes from another Matt. What happens if the Saints draft a left tackle at 14 and Penning actually develops in the meantime? Does Penning move to right tackle?
All right, so here's something interesting about this. If the Saints don't get Olu Fashanu or Joe Alt, a lot of these other guys are right tackles and have been right tackles in their career, including J.C. Latham. I don't think it's out of the question that this year, if they go that route, that they just stick the, it also depends on Ryan Ramczyk. But if Ryan Ramczyk's not available, the other guy could play right tackle this year as he enters the NFL. Trevor Penning could be lining up at left tackle in practice and get that chance to earn that job. And then, down the road, maybe whoever they draft at right tackle eventually moves to left tackle. So it's not out of the question that if Trevor Penning earns his way into the lineup, he earns his way at left tackle. But if he is just tossed aside, look, you're a sixth guy, I don't know. What do you think, left guard or right tackle? Where would they move him to be like, good luck trying to carve out a second life at another position?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I mean, he's a really big person to put at guard. I don't know that his body type, like, I'm not saying he can't, and I'm not saying it's out of the cards, but I think ideally you have your 6'7" player on the outside. That's a big body to have in the middle of the offensive line. I mean, that's a massive,
especially if he doesn't move smoothly.
Yeah, and if you're trying to hit a crossing route and you need to get it over a 6'7" guy, like that's a big guy to throw the ball around. Like, so I think ideally you have him on the outside, and then I think it would just come down to, like, hopefully one of the two can go from playing left-handed, so to speak, to right-handed. And I don't think that you have a preference on that. It's just whoever can do it. There's kind of this idea that left tackle is more premium than right.
Yeah.
I think that's changed over time. What's interesting, though, is that right tackles are typically a little bit heavier than left tackles. Like, and I don't know what the reasoning for that is, and that might be changing a little bit, but the league average is about 10 pounds heavier on the right side than the left side, and that kind of plays into, like, prototyping those positions. So that's one thing there too. But I think that ideally your tackles stay at tackles. Like, your first round pick is a tackle. Hopefully he's able to play right tackle, and you have your two guys there, and then you replace your interior guy, however. But I think however it goes is kind of, if Penning's better playing left guard than right tackle, I mean, we've seen that with Andrews Pete already. It's not always necessarily that someone on the left side can go to the right, and it's not necessary that everyone from tackle can go to guard. Those are hard transitions to make. So whatever way you can configure those guys and get them on the field, I think that's the best configuration.
Let me ask you this, though, about that stigma that left tackle is the premier position. If Ryan Ramczyk is not playing this year, it's a big if. That's a big factor in this. If Ryan Ramczyk is playing, then the next best guy plays left tackle. If Ryan Ramczyk's not playing and you draft Fuaga or Latham or Mims or Guyton or the BYU kid, Suamataya, all five of those guys played right tackle in college. Do you just say, hey, why teach them a new position? We've got an opening at right tackle. Let's put him at right tackle.
Yeah. I think whatever's the easiest, most pain-free thing, like, you just kind of you roll with that. Like, you don't have to change someone. If you can not change someone's position, I think you just let them do what they do. I mean, at some point, Ramczyk might be done now. Like, I almost would. Let me ask you, like, would you be more shocked if he plays or not plays at this point?
After the way that Dennis Allen worded that, and look, we did some follow-up research and stuff like that. I think they're absolutely prepared for the possibility that he's not going to play, but he hasn't made that final decision yet. He's going to make an attempt. 50-50 is the highest percentage I give it that he's playing right now, though.
The way the contract was done and everything, I almost feel like the odds are more against, and it was just kind of like, yeah, we want to see if you can come back. I want to try to come back. Here's $6.5 million. You can try to do that. Please don't retire and screw up our cap this year. Give it your best shot.
Well, they owed him that money no matter what. So it was very similar to Drew Brees, Malcolm Jenkins. I mean, they stripped it down to the bare minimum of what they owed him.
It was just kind of like, don't retire, don't accelerate the charges, just chill. We don't have it in our cap plan right now. Like, try to get better, and let's all hope for the best. I think that's just kind of where they're at with it. But yeah, I would probably put my money and this is just on gut feel 100%. No info, just kind of looking at it, reading it. I'm more pessimistic about him playing than optimistic. So I think there's a very real chance we don't see him again, and I think they have to draft accordingly. You have to draft that way. Like if there's a right tackle and he has no experience ever playing on the left side, but he's the best player, you take him, and that's your plan. And he holds it down at that point and be ready to move on. I mean, as hard as it is, sometimes it's, if he comes back and he's productive, it's coming to an end. It's always better to be early than late.
But just to sum that up, so I think maybe the most likely scenario is if they draft a guy who's used to playing right tackle and Ramczyk doesn't come back, I think the first day that we're out there at OTAs, we're going to see Trevor Penning at left tackle and the new guy at right tackle. And look, that doesn't mean they can't change that down the road. The guy could play right tackle his whole rookie year, then next year make the transition if Penning's just not it. But to answer the question, if Penning surprises everyone and is good, left tackle could be Penning's home, and the new guy could play right tackle.
I like Penning's odds of being able to play at left tackle more than right tackle. He's had a hard enough transition playing the position that he knows how to play. Like now you want to put him at a new spot, and he's had trouble picking everything up, and now you want him to like everything he was doing with his right hand first, now he has to do with his left, and now you're adding in all that thinking again. I think it's hard. I think it's a hard transition for him to make. All right. Next question comes from @Noodles51. As objective reporters of the Saints, do you find it hard to not get caught up in hype negativity that surrounds the team? And do you consciously try not to follow groupthink that surrounds the team?
I liked this question because this is something I try to convey to people sometimes when I have conversations with them. I don't really get into it on social media a lot, but obviously a lot of people want us to be as mad as they are. And the funny thing is they're always like, why don't you ask tough questions, or why don't you get more animated in press conferences? And then a lot of times we also get accused of like defending the Saints moves, even if we don't disagree with them. I think if you listen to our show, we will often say things like, that's not how I would do it, I don't agree with the move. But what I think is our number one job, especially since we have access to a lot of good sources, is when a lot of people are thinking, what are the Saints doing? We are trying to answer the question, what are the Saints doing? Like, what are you mad at? I try to stay plugged in and find out what everyone's mad about, why everyone has stopped coming to the games, why everyone's booing, and then I try to explain to them, well, this is what the Saints are thinking. Well, yeah, they're aware of that too, and this is how they're going to try to address it. I do care what all the fans think about, but I try not to get caught up emotionally. I try to be like, all right, well, let me get to the bottom of that.
Yeah, that's really all I'm trying to do too. I think 2 years ago I kind of got caught up in kind of like some of the narrative stuff a little bit too much, and it was kind of affecting how I thought about stuff, because you're just reading Twitter and you're like absorbing it, and I was getting like mad at people for being like, they're saying Nick and Mike are saying this or they're saying that, and then just over time I've realized that like when I read Saints Report, I used to be Mr. quote, as they say, sunshine pumper. Now I'm too negative. And then when I read Twitter, they say that I'm too positive about things. And then I got like people that played for the team that said I was bullying Pete Carmichael. Like, so it just doesn't matter. It's just people are going to catch what they catch. And it's just, I'm kind of playing it down the middle now. Like, that stuff does not affect me anymore. I think people are just kind of caught up in their own thing. As far as like the groupthink thing, as someone, and I'm related to negative or positive, I just don't really read or listen to anything anybody else does. I don't want their thoughts influencing my thoughts. I read Mike and I read kind of nobody else. And that's just because I want to look at things through my own fresh set of eyes. And I think when you read or consume too much, that stuff kind of like infiltrates your thoughts, and you aren't looking at it kind of purely. Like when I put on a game, especially like film review stuff, like I try to stay away, whether it's Balding or anybody, like I'm staying away from it, because when I put it on, I want to see what I see. I don't want to see what somebody else is seeing, and I kind of trust what I see, and I kind of feel like, I want to have my own opinion on it. And then sometimes after that, I'll be like, all right, what did Baldinger say in his video? I'll watch it once I'm done, and then maybe that opens my eyes up to it. But that first look, especially on Monday, Tuesday, I don't want to see or hear anything. I don't want to hear the broadcast, nothing. Like, I want that to be kind of very, very clean. But, yeah, as far as, like, Saints content and that, like, I stay away. I don't want anyone's thoughts to be ours. Like, when we're talking about it, I want to be coming to it from our point of view.
Yeah, look, and I know one popular accusation right now that I keep seeing on Twitter is that, like, all of us in the Saints media have collectively decided to give up on Derek Carr. I know in the case of Carr, sometimes I've been really optimistic on him. There was a stretch of the season where I was really down on him. But, yeah, I mean, when you hear my opinion on how I think a player is playing, how I think a player fits, it's my opinion. I will ask other smart people. Conversation we just had with Matt Bowen. That could affect what I think. I know he studied the tape. I know he played the game. I know he understands the defense and what players are trying to do. Yeah, that stuff will influence me. But my opinions really are my opinions. They are not. I don't craft an opinion to get better access to the team, to please the coaches, to please the fans. Like, my opinions are genuine. You hear my opinions, they're genuine.
Yeah, I mean, we had like a 14-hour argument yesterday, like about the cap. Like, those are the things that happen. Those are the conversations.
There was no groupthink between me and Nick. We could not convince the other person to agree with our
like
side.
On the most, like, yeah, those are the conversations. But yeah, definitely try to stay away from that stuff and just come at it from a pure place. And people are gonna like it. They're not gonna like it. It's just kind of is what it is. My only hope is that just they get to a place where like the supreme negativity on April 5th doesn't exist anymore. But you got to win games to kind of be at that spot. So it's definitely better when people are happy, though, and hopefully they give people something to be happy about. We will give you something happy to be about on Monday when we are back with the next episode of this show. Until then, sign up for the website, and we'll see you next time.